I've been moving towards this idea. Now, I spoke to Tom Brake from Unlock Democracy earlier this year, and we spoke about this idea of having a written constitution or some sort of constitutional convention or something like that in the UK. And the idea has kind of been like gestating in my mind for a little bit. And the more I think about it, the more I think that we need some sort of yeah, I don't want to call it a constitutional convention, because I don't necessarily think we need a specifically written constitution, although maybe that would be the result of it. I think we need, like, I keep calling it the big review of Britain, where we go in and we go, okay, look, here's the stuff that's working. Here's the stuff that's like done us proud over the last 30 or 40 years. Here are the rights that we believe people have. Here are the powers that government should have. Here's like maybe we get rid of the House of Lords. Maybe we implement proportional representation. Maybe we stop MPs having second jobs. But I think more and more and more that the solution to a lot of our problems is to get citizens' assemblies of people and get them to sit down, have like ideas presented to them, and just talk through and vote on ways that we could strengthen our democracy and enshrine rights and freedoms that will and have proven to be absolutely fundamental to progress and prosperity as a species. Like, do you think that that's an unrealistic thing that we?
I think it's a beautiful idea. I think we've got to look back at the past. You look at Magna Carta, you look at 1688 and all of that stuff, all a long time ago. You look at the US Constitution, and of course, elements of the US Constitution came from our Bill of Rights. For example, the right to keep and bear arms is actually part of 1688 and all that, although in Britain it was, or in England it was something that was limited to Protestants, by the way, in 1688. It was a way of defending the realm against these naughty Catholics who were thought to be scheming. But the Americans took that and put it in their constitution, which is a fascinating byway. Do I think it's possible? Yeah, not only do I think it's possible, I think it's something we've got to do. Do we want a written constitution? There are disadvantages to a written constitution. I mean, the US example proves that, but I think there are also advantages to it. And I think the idea, we were saying there are a lot of things that we all believe in. Essentially, we believe in justice. We believe that old people shouldn't starve or freeze to death. We believe that people shouldn't die because they can't afford treatment. Perhaps we believe that we shouldn't be taxed to death as well. Because taxation now is another very interesting issue. I mean, the average person now is probably paying over 60% in taxation when you add it all up. Direct and indirect taxation. And a lot of that money is wasted. A lot of that money is taken up in the processes and the collection processes themselves. But worse, a lot of the money is put into bureaucracies which are dysfunctional and actually make our lives worse. So there's a lot of stuff there to talk about. And yes, I think we do need a new constitution. And I think there would be, if anyone would present that as a vision to the public, as a political vision, I think that's got legs. And I think giving people more power, giving people their power back. But with that power comes responsibility. If you do have things like citizens' assemblies, people have got to go to them. They've got to make the effort to vote. Maybe they can do it online. I don't know. But there's certainly new models which we should be considering now. Proportional representation. People will tell you that as soon as you have proportional representation, government becomes moribund. Well, maybe, but you also get a much better and fairer representation of opinion. And you don't get this terrible polarity, which is tearing us apart. And meantime, of course, the elephant in the living room is that a liberal democracy is developing into some sort of new totalitarianism. I mean, and this is scary as hell. I mean, I, again, am old enough to remember a different sort of freedom. Things used to be, when I was young, things were much freer than they are now. Much, much freer. Our liberty is being taken away from us, and we accept it. We accept it every time we phone a call center and you can't get through. We accept it every time some official body tells you you've got to do this or you've got to do that, or you have to pay for this or pay for that. There's so much intrusion in our lives now. The boundaries are not clear. I mean, in America, traditionally, America always liked to think it's free, but in fact, in practice, and I've lived in the States, it's not as free a country as the Americans like to believe. There was a great tyranny of public opinion. Now there's an awful lot of actual legislative tyranny, and the tyranny of laws, which have grown too all-encompassing. I mean, if you actually look at how many new laws hit the statute books every year, life is getting too complicated as well. This is another aspect. Whoever is in power is trying to cover everything legalistically. And none of the people on the ground, none of the small agents of big power have any discretion anymore. Everything is done according to some sort of tick box routine. And the effect of that on us as individuals is that our lives are becoming much, much more constrained, that we waste infinite portions of our lives dealing with both corporate and governmental bureaucracies. It doesn't feel anything like freedom at all, really, anymore. And if that process continues, I think people will go mad. I think it's as simple as that. If we're not going mad at the moment, we definitely will go mad in large numbers in the future. And then who knows, what will happen. We do need to consider a constitution. We do need to consider proportional representation. We do need to consider government giving back some of the power they have taken and handing it back to us. So these are all vitally important issues.
And I agree with so much of what you said there. I do want to say that, like, I'm not one of these free marketeers. We should just let corporations pollute and do whatever they want. Like, there are places, there's time for robust regulation, and in many of the industries where we need it, there isn't any, which is like the most irritating part. Is like some of parts of our lives are incredibly micromanaged, and some of them are just like left to sort of do as they please. And it really confuses me as to what's going on. But I mean, I just in terms of what you said about freedom, it reminded me of this wonderful Thomas Jefferson quote, whose statue actually got taken down yesterday somewhere in America. Yeah, I mean, I was laughing because there was a picture doing the rounds about. It was like people, like a headline being like, Donald Trump is being hyperbolic. They will never remove statues of Jefferson and Washington. And then like 18 months later, here we are. But anyway, the quote is, which I love, it says, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. And to me, that basically means if the government gets too tyrannical, it is our job as the people to say no. And
people in the States are much more alert to that idea than we are. The idea that if government does become tyrannical, you should say, no, enough, boys, stop doing it. We're taking our power back. People in England, by contrast, probably people in Germany too, people in Scandinavia, just tend to do as they're told. The French are a bit more bolshy. They have manifestations. They go on the street in large number. Although, having said that, France looks like a pretty scary place at the moment. Mr. Macron seems, if Boris has a Churchillian complex, Mr. Macron seems to have a Napoleon complex.
One of the things actually that Peter Pomerantsev was talking about in this book was the difference. So when he went to an international school at one point, and he met some French people, and he learned about Napoleon, and their view of Napoleon is as like an absolute like proof of meritocracy and like a general who rose through the ranks to become a hero and a conqueror for France. And like their version of what Napoleon is compared to what we think is so different. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's true. No, it is. It's true. And of course, I mean, the French really think that that Napoleon won, essentially. I mean, they've completely rewritten history in their own favor. I mean, that's France. There's some great characteristics of France as well, but a realistic view of Napoleon isn't one of them. Where are we going, though? I mean, it's an interesting point about Napoleonism, the autocrat. We see autocrats all over the world now coming to power. and directly challenging the idea even now of liberal democracy. They've got the arrogance now to start saying, oh, actually, my autocracy with me as the great leader is better than anything that liberal democracy can come up with. And my answer to them, and I think yours would be the same, is hold on, guys, no, because what we have now at the moment in the West probably isn't really democracy at all. It is democracy which has been perverted, by all sorts of interests and power groups. And the essential feature of a liberal democracy is that the people have power. And that power of the individual has been taken away from us more and more and more. And partly, and this is the big deal, we've let it happen. And we've been complicit with that. So we bear some of the responsibility ourselves. It's all very well to look at Westminster and say they're all shysters, they're all corrupt. And there is, obviously there's a staggering amount of corruption now amongst politicians. But we have played our part. We bear some responsibility. And we just don't really want to take, we don't want to do anything about that. We just want to say how awful these people are without seeing that they are in some ways a reflection of ourselves. So that is an interesting area. And meantime, of course, you'll get people coming up on the fringes of politics, on the extremes of politics, and offering themselves up as saviors. And for those people who don't really want to take responsibility themselves, those saviors, those potential autocrats will be, they'll be attractive, unfortunately. And you can see it. You can see people coming up on the margins. I won't mention specifics, but on both sides of the political spectrum. That is what happens under the sort of circumstances we're living through, which are a bit scary. Yeah. So, and for the people watching this, are you worried about what's happening? Are you a bit scared? Well, that's a normal reaction. This is a very, very weird time in history we're living through. And to go back to what I said earlier, I have never known anything like it in my 60 plus years of life. And I've been through a lot of situations, war and peace and revolution, you name it, not to mention 4 kids and all the stuff that goes with it, 12 books, 2 million words of journalism. I've been through quite a lot in my life. And this isn't normal. It is very weird. And we shouldn't pretend nothing's happening.
Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment for us in the comments below. Let me know what you thought and if you'd like to see more of this from the show. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.